It was September 1998. President Bill Clinton was arguing to the public that he should not have to resign. Google was barely 2 weeks old, and the next generation of young adults was getting prematurely saddled with ridiculous amounts of debt.
College for many, the first taste of freedom and of responsibility. And for some, easy money and big debts.
Free gift by Citibank card?
Lured by cheap giveaways, pens, CD holders, college kids can get credit cards easily.
I didn't have to put anything down that I had a job or that I was really able to pay it.
That can lead to big trouble. The average credit card debt for students is $1,800. A recent study by a Harvard law professor shows 250,000 young people file for personal bankruptcy before they're even 25.
We're talking about young people who are beginning their lives, their professional careers, and starting families by declaring themselves financial failure because of the debt they've run up while they're in college.
Recognize that familiar face? Elizabeth Warren was a professor at Harvard Law School and an expert in bankruptcy law. But at this point in her career, she had not only gained a reputation for being able to explain the financial industry and the financial system in a way that made sense to regular people at home, she also specifically gained a reputation for telling you things that were helpful to your own life, but that the financial industry really didn't want you to hear.
When credit card companies prey on the vulnerable, it's just a way to fleece the young people of America.
Elizabeth Warren has long had a knack for explaining what regular middle-class people in America were feeling on a very personal level, what was happening to them, and importantly, explaining why it was not necessarily their fault. A side effect of Elizabeth Warren's public profile before she ever became a figure in American politics was that she took the shame out of the financial struggle that regular working Americans have faced as the system has served them less and less well over time. The title of her 2003 book about why things were so tough for middle-class families was plain. She called it The Two-Income Trap. It was a blockbuster for a good reason. She based it on research she had done with her daughter that showed middle-class families not struggling because of outlandish spending on things they couldn't afford. They were struggling because they had, in many ways, been set up for failure.
What we discovered is that what we think of as ordinary consumer spending, families are spending less. So the question became, why are they going broke? And the answer is the basic expenses, the things it takes to raise a family in the middle class. Mortgage, health insurance, a second car so that mom can get to work, tuition for preschool, tuition for college. Those are the expenses, those core expenses that are slamming families against the wall financially.
Getting out there, speaking plainly, telling regular people at home, understand the system that's gotten you where you are. This is not of your own making. The system is stacked against you, and here is why. That was Elizabeth Warren's public profile. It spoke to people at home watching TV. It spoke to Democrats as they pursued new ways to try to protect middle-class families and consumers at the federal level, particularly in the context of the Wall Street collapse in 2008 and 2009. Now it is the centerpiece of her potential bid for the White House.
In our country, if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to take care of yourself and the people you love. That's a fundamental promise of America. A promise that should be true for everyone. I've spent my career getting to the bottom of why America's promise works for some families, but others who work just as hard slip through the cracks into disaster. And what I've found is terrifying. These aren't cracks that families are falling into, they're traps. America's middle class is under attack.
They are traps. This is talk about consistency. This is the message that for decades has made Elizabeth Warren a fairly terrifying specter to Wall Street and to the people who benefit from how the system works now and the way the system is stacked against regular Americans. Those attacks sharpened when she decided she herself would jump into electoral politics in 2012, when she unseated one of the coziest and best paid friends of the financial industry, Republican Senator Scott Brown of Massachusetts. He was an incumbent Republican senator at the time. She beat him by 8 points. Now she just got reelected senator in Massachusetts by 24 points. And now she has announced her formal exploration of a run for the White House. Joining us now for the interview is Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts. Thank you so much for being here, Senator.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why? A lot of people are considering running. A few people have already stuck a toe in the water. You are the first household name Democrat, the first heavyweight, to announce that you are going to go ahead with this exploratory committee. Why are you going first?
Well, look, I want to be in this fight because this is, in my view, the fundamental question that faces our country. And it's so who does Washington work for? You can see what the trap is. Why does the trap continue year after year after year? And the answer is because Washington is working great, fabulously, for the wealthy and the well-connected. They have bought the government they want. They have bought the rules that they want. I think that Washington ought to work for everybody else. And I think that's what this fight ought to be about. We're talking about a system that is fundamentally corrupt, that the money that flows through Washington is how it is that this whole system just stays rigged. And the folks at the top doing great, and everybody else just sliding further and further.
I live in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I'm one of your constituents.
Good.
You were just reelected. But
You just voted?
I did
Yes,
just vote.
good.
You just won in a landslide. I can see a future for you where if you could live to be 300 years old, Massachusetts would continue electing you until you were 300. I
Thank
can
you.
imagine you, because of what I know about Massachusetts and because of what I know about you as a politician and your beliefs and your skills, that you could go back to, you could build a lifelong rest of your career in the Senate and become the liberal economic populist lion of the Senate. And I can imagine you doing a lot of good in that role. I don't know, if I were you, why I would prefer to try to achieve those goals as president rather than trying to continue to achieve them and build on what you've already done in the Senate.
So look, this isn't about me. This is about tens of millions of families across this country who are getting cheated. And they're getting cheated on financial products. They're getting cheated on prescription drugs, a Washington that works great for drug companies, not for people who are trying to fill prescriptions. You can just keep going through the list. It's working great for oil companies that want to drill everywhere, not for families who have children that want to breathe the air. This is truly about what kind of a country we're going to be. And look, I never thought I was going to get in politics, never in a million years. But I got in this because I believe this is the fight that we must fight. And I can't tell others to go fight it. I have to be in there right alongside them. We are building a movement across this country. You saw it. You saw it in 2018. Look at all the people who came off the sidelines. Look at all the people who said, look at all the women who said, never thought I was going to be called on to do this. But they stood up and they said, I'm part of this. This is my country, my voice will be heard, and my government will reflect my values. That's what I believe. And I think the best place to fight that is right there from the presidency of the United States of America.
In terms of the Democratic Party right now, this is going to be a huge year in Democratic politics. I mean, it has been sort of the Trump show.
Yeah.
Since the 2016 election, because it's been honestly a bizarre spectacle to have somebody of this caliber behaving the way that he is in that office. This will be the Democratic Party show this year, and there will be an incredible competition to be the candidate to take him on in 2020, and the Democrats will get to show what they're made of in terms of having control of the House. How do you fit into this year's Democratic Party? We've got this new class of House lawmakers is coming in with outspoken lefties and socialists and environmentalists and feminists and all sorts of upenders of the status quo. Yep. I know that you're a progressive. You voted 13% of the time with Donald Trump, which is one of the lowest percentages of anybody in the Senate. How do you fit in with the Democratic Party, and where do you see your party right now?
Look, I don't think of this so much in terms of party. I think of this as people who want to see change and the kind of change they want to see. This is going to be the Fisher-Cut-Bait year for the Democrats. And it's going to be, how do we think government should work and who do we think government should work for? In fact, let me give you an example of that. Just think about this upcoming Democratic primary. Is this going to be a Democratic primary that truly is a grassroots movement that is funded by the grassroots, that's done with grassroots volunteers? Or is this going to be something that's just one more plaything that billionaires can buy. So I think this is a moment for all of the Democratic nominees as they come into the race to say, in a Democratic primary, we are going to link arms and we're going to say grassroots funding. No to the billionaires. No to the billionaires, whether they are self-funding or whether they're funding PACs. We are the Democratic Party, and that's the party of the people. That's how we not only win elections, that's how we build movements that make real change. And that's what we've got to do. We got to win, but then we got to produce. And that's only going to happen if we've got a whole movement underway.
When you talk about billionaires in the Democratic primary, Tom Steyer is considering running. Michael Bloomberg is apparently considering running. Do you specifically mean that anybody who's a billionaire should be precluded from running?
Of course not. I just mean that people should not be self-funding. And they should not be funded from PACs from other billionaires. That a primary is an opportunity to hear from the grassroots, to see what you can build, to see what kind of energy is out there. Get out there. Trust your message. Trust what it is that you're fighting for. And if someone else wants to fight for something different, trust them to get out there and fight it. And then let's see where grassroots America is. Let's see where people across this country say, you know what? I want to be part of this. I am in this fight all the way.
Senator Elizabeth Warren is our guest. Senator, I'm not going to let you leave for a good long time. Stay right there where you are. We'll be right back with Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.